From here on out, we no longer need our old map document. We only use it to format our base data and to examine our base data for problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a whole new map document to be used solely for the purposes of analysis. So I went and opened ArcMap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose New Map, or I'm going to choose a blank map. And down here where it says Default GeoDatabase for this map, this is where I'm actually going to specify what GeoDatabase to use. So I'm going to choose this Browse folder, and I'm going to navigate out to where my GeoDatabase is located. So it's located in my Projects Drive, Projects, Project Site, GIS. I'm going to go to the GeoDatabase directory, and I'm just going to click on this marletpark.gdb and then choose Add. So that adds the default GeoDatabase for this map. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then up here at the top where it says Layers, we can either add data that is in the desired spatial projection, or we can give the data frame a spatial projection. So I'm just going to right click on my data frame and go to Properties, and I'm just going to give it a spatial projection just so that we can know how to do that. So I went to the Coordinate System tab, and I'm choosing the projected coordinate system. Remember, one is kind of spherical and the other one is flat, so I'm choosing the flat one. I'm going to go to State Plane. I want it to be in NAD 1983 US feet, and this is what all my data is in. And the site is located in northeastern Kansas, so I'm going to look for Kansas North FIPS 1501. I'm going to click OK. And one thing that we usually like to do with our data frame is we like to rename it after our spatial projection, because sometimes you can have multiple data frames in your table of contents that are in different spatial projections. So this kind of helps us keep it straight. We may not have multiple data frames, but we're just going to do this just for the sake of good practice. So I'm naming it NAD 1983, State Plane, Kansas North. I'm abbreviating 1501 FIPS US feet. It's going to click OK to that. So now our data frame is named after our spatial projection. The next thing I want to do is I want to add all of my data that is in my GeoDatabase. So I can right click here and select Add Data, and you notice it goes to our GeoDatabase right away because we set that as our default workspace. So I'm going to go to Marlet Park, and I'm just going to click and drag to select all of these, and then click Add. And we see that all of our data has been added. One other thing that we're probably going to want to do is we can organize our data frame a little bit better. So we can start to put things in what are called group layers. So I'm going to right click up here again and go to New Group Layer. And what this essentially is just a container for us, a visual container to contain some of these maps in. And we can turn things on and off as a group. So I'm going to right click on this and go to Properties. I'm going to rename this to Source, because what we just added into our data frame is all of our source data. So I'm going to make this maybe all caps. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of these. I'm just going to click on the top one, scroll down, press the Shift key, and select the bottom one so that all of them are selected, and drag and drop them into Source. So now if I uncheck the source, all the layers will be turned off because all of them are contained within this source directory. And it's not an actual physical directory on your hard drive. It's just a directory in this table of contents for the purposes of controlling what is being displayed. So if I uncheck source, they all come off. If I check it back in, they all turn back on. We can further organize our source directory by creating some subgroup layers. So I can right click on source and go to New Group Layer. So you notice it's now created inside of source. I'll right click on this Go to properties, and maybe I want to call this county data. And the group layer names do not need to conform with the naming restrictions of GIS files, because these are not actual files, these are just visual containers for us, or like labels. So our water, sewer points, all of this stuff here was part of county data, and I'm just going to uncheck county data. So as I add things in, they get turned off. So this was just selecting everything that came as part of my county data. And that was not part of my county data. This one wasn't either. So I want to use the control key instead of the shift key to select things. I was using shift before, so I selected everything. So I'm going to use control and then press the left mouse button to manually go through and select things. So I'm going to drag and drop this into here. And then I think that's about it. We have our soils, our area of interest that we created, our DEM that we clipped, and our aerial. So MPA stands for Marlet Park Adjacent Area, basically. So I have MPA DEM, MPA aerial, and then MPA soils. So I'm just going to kind of collapse this county data area group layer here. So notice now our data frame is much more manageable. So I might create a new one here, right click on this and go to properties, and maybe I'll call this Dask and put all the data that I got from Dask into there. And then finally we have one, I'm going to turn that off, one that we got from the USDA website. I'm going to call this one USDA and click OK. And I can drag and drop this into the USDA group. Finally, the last thing that we need to talk about is how to save your map document. One thing that I like to do when I save my map document is to turn off all of the layers. And the reason why is because when you go to load your map document, you could have pretty long load times if you have all of these layers turned on, because not only does it have to load ArcMap, but it's got to load each and every single one of these layers. So what I usually like to do is just turn them all off and then save my document. And now it's easy to turn them all off because you can control it with just a single checkbox up here at the top. So I'm going to go to File and Save As. And right now I already have one here, so I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call this, I'm going to name it after today's date. What I usually like to do is I like to version my files. And when you version your files, so this one's going to be version 2, you're basically creating multiple copies or backups of the same thing, and you're keeping track of your steps. So right now I've called this 2013-01-21 version 2 underscore project site underscore what it is, and this is kind of where I'm starting. So I'm going to call this new doc. I'm going to click save. And I always add the version numbering in front of the file name if it is a work in progress. If I am done with the file and I know I don't need to do any work to it, I will put the version numbers after the name of the file. So for example, up here I know that this is work in progress, so I have placed the version numbering in front of the actual project site name. But when I'm done with this file, this numbering will be attached to the back. At the end of new doc, I'll have an underscore and then the version number. And this helps me later if I need to pull this off my archive hard drive, which one was my final document. And if I'm running out of hard drive space and I find that I have to delete things, I know exactly which ones to delete because I can delete all the work in progresses and keep the final document. Work in progresses also help you to be able to backtrack if you make a mistake somewhere. So instead of having to start completely over, you can go back to a previously saved version. Also, a lot of people tend to only have one and only one file. And if that one and only one file becomes corrupted or something catastrophic happens, you've lost your one and only file and you have nothing to go back to. You have to start completely over. So that's another reason that you want to version. So as far as where to save these, I'm going to click here again. I save things into my project drive, projects, my project site name, GIS, and workspace. I put things in workspace. This is kind of a work in progress directory. So now that I've saved, I'm going to go ahead and create some new group layers up here. I'm going to create 2 more. This middle one is going to become my inventory. And maybe this top one is going to become my analysis. And what we're pretty much going to be doing in this next set of video tutorials is we're going to be creating some inventory items. So we're going to have a lot more stuff here under inventory, and these inventory items are going to be derived from this source data down here. So I'm going to go ahead and save.